Hi everyone, this is Paul here for the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing a report on the Sun's transit through Taurus, which begins on the 20th of April and finishes on the 21st of May when the Sun moves on to Gemini. And I'll be explaining what the overall themes of this transit mean for us, along with what some of the aspects between the Sun and the other planets will highlight to us during the course of the month. Now, the Sun's obviously been in Aries, and this has been all about initiating new beginnings, so taking action, pursuing new goals which you may not have tried before, and just having that willingness to face the unknown and take action in the face of uncertainty. So rather than relying on developing or learning all the facts first, it's having the courage to take action despite not knowing the outcome in advance and facing any fears and uncertainty in the process. But once the Sun moves on to Taurus, this is less about the initiating new beginnings and more about steadying the ship and maintaining the growth that we've already established. Because Aries, if you look at its glyph, it's like a seed that's just sprouted. So it's that initial fight for a seed to germinate and new beginnings to be initiated. But once they have started, we then have to go to the next stage, which is about sustaining what's already been started. So if we can see what kind of growth we're achieving so far, we can see which projects have successfully initiated and which ones haven't, this is now time to slow down and focus on the projects which are working, which are showing signs of growth and continual development, which will last the entire astrological cycle. And to just learn to slow down and remember that for anything to keep going, we have to do the small bits as well. So these small day-by-day steps to sustain something. So, for example, I'm down here at the allotment, so we've planted some of the seeds, but if we don't keep them watered throughout the year, if we don't make sure they're free of pests, then we won't harvest any crops at the end. So Taurus is this time of slowing down and remembering to deal with the everyday things, which may not be particularly inspiring, may not be the most interesting, but this is the stage of the journey which is kind of critical in that it helps to decide or see how committed we are to actually pursuing a goal. Because when motivation and that initial enthusiasm starts to wear off, we need to have that resilience and that perseverance to keep going at the goal through any period where things seem to slow down a bit. This is how Taurus helps us, because Taurus is that it's fixed earth energy, so it's that slow, steady growth. Taurus also deals with how we cultivate our resources, and this unfortunately often gets limited to, or people just hear resources and they think money and generating money. But our key resource, if you think about it, is actually ourselves. It's that creativity within the human spirit, it's that willingness to dig deep and develop new skills or new abilities in order to more masterfully handle the elements and more masterfully handle the raw materials. So yes, money is one side of that, but we need to look at what are our internal resources, what are we capable of doing, and how can we better manipulate the resources around us. I'm not saying that we seek to control things, but if we understand how things work, or we seek to sync up with the natural cycles of things, we'll see when's the best time to take the action and when we need to just sit still and relax. So Taurus deals with those organic cycles of life, those cycles that you cannot rush them no matter how impatient you may be. They remind us to be patient, they remind us to be present, and that everything has its own natural timing, it has its own organic cycles which cannot be rushed in any way. So why try to push against them? Why try to fight them? Why not just learn to relax, get into sync up with these cycles ourselves, so that we have that intuitive grasp of when to do things and when to hold off on doing something, and to just take a more relaxed approach to things. Taurus is also, with it being fixed earth, it also reminds us to develop that strong connection with nature, because Taurus is about grounding. Aries was all about that initiating action, it's that fire that motivates us to get going, but that same fire can burn us out if we don't remember to slow down from time to time and take things at a slightly slower pace to make sure that we're not overdoing things, we're not burning ourselves out from the get-go. And Taurus reminds us to slow down and spend a bit of time in nature. If you ever felt that sense when you barefoot on grass or anything like that, then you know how calming that can feel. And it's learn to let the mind become calm again. So it's rather than constantly planning things and constantly trying to take action, it's that slowing down and trying to bring peace to the mind through actions like contemplation. And if you listen to all the noise around me, you can hear all the birds singing. You can't really describe the feeling you get when you're just sitting in a natural green environment and just listening to the natural sounds around us rather than all the artificial noise we're bombarded with every day. So part of Taurus is also about that, remembering to spend time with the self, to spend time away from all the stimulation in a natural environment if possible, or just in somewhere that's quiet and allows us to contemplate and just give the mind a break from all the mad rush of Aries. And Taurus is also about developing things like self-esteem and self-worth. So Aries is that initial I am and the initial self-awareness, but we need to then ground it in the body, and this is what Taurus is all about. It's taking that step to ground our sense of identity, to make sure that what we're doing is sensible, is right for us. And Taurus is that value system. It's understanding what are our own innate values, because we all think we know what we value, but more often than not we've been conditioned with a different set of values to the ones that we were initially born with, because we all have our own innate set of values, but this can often gets distorted, and sometimes we need to spend that time away from all that stimulation to reconnect with the self, to get in touch with our core sense of self, and to reflect on what do we really value and what is right for us and what isn't right for us, and obviously move towards the things which are true to who we are and away from the things which aren't. But one of the key shadow sides that Taurus is well known for is the materialistic side of things, and this is generally driven by that human need for a sense of security. But if we're looking, the main thing here is that we need to cultivate the security on the inside, so it's becoming secure within ourselves rather than relying on external props like money, like material possessions, or trying to possess other people in order to feel secure. Because whilst we're relying on external props to feel secure within ourselves, we'll continue to try and manipulate other people or keep trying to accumulate more and more things in the hopes it makes us feel more secure, and it never seems to be quite enough. There's always that dissatisfaction later on, because material things may seem great when we first get them, but they quickly lose that kind of luster, that value with us, and we're left feeling dissatisfied again. And what we need to do here is we need to remember to turn inwards and develop that security within ourselves, and this comes through strengthening our self-confidence, strengthening our self-esteem, and strengthening our self-worth, and understanding that our worth and our value is not determined by other people. You can't put a figure on it. It's not some financial number. Developing that sense of self-worth and self-esteem is key to recognising that we're all worthy of belonging, we're all worthy of connection, and we're all inherently valuable as we are, but we often end up trying to change our sense of who we are or change our value systems to what other people are saying is right. And because we then lose touch with our core and who we truly are, we then try and seek that security through external things. So this is why it's often important with Taurus to detach from the everyday, or detach from a constant drive and stimulation that we often experience in our day-to-day lives, and take some time out, whether it be in contemplation or whether we go to a natural environment, to just reconnect with nature, feel that energy flow through us, and feel that soothing, calm energy that natural environments give off by their very nature, rather than relying on the manufactured environments, as it were. So if we learn to not rely on, or if we learn to develop that sense of innate value, innate worth, and innate self-esteem through grounding our sense of identity and getting a strong connection with our body, because the body is what allows us to ground in the first place. It's the temple, if you like, and it's grounding the soul into the temple so that we're fully present. And Taurus is also rules the physical senses. So you think like touch, taste, smell, the senses that you feel almost immediately present, because if you weren't present you wouldn't be able to feel them at all. So, and in terms of kind of love, if you think about hugs, for example, this is a rather Taurian thing. How many times has it been a case of, if you're struggling with something, you can't really put it into words, but when you embrace one another and you just embrace into that silent hug, sometimes all that hug is all we need in order to decompress, to relax, and it just seems to communicate so much more than words can ever put into, or to do justice of how we're feeling. So the physical senses here are another part of getting in touch and getting present and grounded in the body, and especially things like touch, taste and smell. So it's not that we try and pursue sensations or anything like that, but sometimes taking a moment, taking a breath and just paying attention to sights and sounds, the smells, the feeling of things can get us grounded very quickly. So Taurus at its highest though is about that sense of detachment. So it's learning to be in the world and not of it. So in terms of the material world around us, it's understand that we can learn to love and appreciate our natural environments and the things that we have. We need to understand that we don't possess it either. At any given point, we're just a steward of things, and at some point, then usually they just naturally move on because they've served their purpose. But if we can maintain that detachment where we appreciate and acknowledge the beauty of life, we appreciate the fruits of the spirit and the fruits of our own labours, we don't claim any ownership of it because it's there for us to develop and nurture and then to share it. And by learning to become secure within ourselves, so we develop that sense of security inside ourselves rather than relying on external support, we've become much stronger, much more present, and this often allows us to tap into our resources at a much deeper level and dredge up the deepest levels of our inner resources so that we can be better able at co-creating, of understanding the need for working within the natural cycles of nature, because you wouldn't worry, for example, why do you plant crops in winter that have to be planted in summer? So it's about knowing the right timing of things, and it's only through getting in touch with the organic rhythms of life and recognising when we should be trying to grow things and when to take a step back and let go of things because they've served their time, that particular cycle of growth is over. And that way, through working with the organic cycles of life, we're not trying to fight against things, we're not stressing ourselves out, trying to make things happen on our schedule when they're never going to do that. If we learn to recognise the natural timing of things and the natural order of things and work with them rather than against them, then we often feel a much greater sense of serenity and peace within ourselves. We're no longer trying to fight the natural order of things, we're aligning with it and working with it so that we're trying to get the best out of it as possible without trying to manipulate it and force it to work on our schedule. Now, in terms of the aspects to the sun's month, most of the planets that the sun interacts with are either in earth or water this month. So for the most part, the aspects to the sun from the outer planets are primarily the likes of trines and sextiles, although there is the opposition to Jupiter. But as a result, a lot of the energy is quite free-flowing between the sun and the planets this month. So this doesn't necessarily mean that things will always be easy, but with a lot of it being trines to planets in Capricorn, when these aspects take place, because it's such an easy flowing energy, we may overlook the opportunities, or we may just neglect the opportunity to strengthen things and make best use of that smooth flowing energy to deepen certain traits, as it were. But in terms of the aspects, the first one is a trine between the Sun in Taurus and Vesta in Capricorn. Now, if you haven't heard of Vesta, Vesta is a goddess asteroid that orbits between Mars and Jupiter. It's one of the 4 largest in the asteroid belt, and she symbolises devotion and personal integrity to the self, so we're not dependent on another person to have a sense of self. It's having that internal connection, that devotion to spirit and devotion to being true to who we are. And with the Sun trine to Vesta, this is a time where, because Vesta is all about, Vesta represented like the hearth, this eternal flame, and obviously the necessity of nurturing that flame by being true to ourselves rather than trying to, or allowing events around us to suppress that internal flame. So Vesta is nurturing that internal flame of spirit, of keeping it strong, keeping it burning, and making sure that we're being true to ourselves and we're spending time in spiritual devotion, whether it be in contemplation or anything else like that, or meditation, yoga, going for a walk, but with the intention of using it to calm the mind and do it in a meditative way. There's many different ways, but Vesta is all about that devotion. And with her being in Capricorn, Capricorn is all about that personal integrity, where our public face and our private identity, so the one that only we know ourselves, because it's our internal nature, the two become one and the same ideally. So this trine is an opportunity for us to become more dedicated or develop greater devotion to being our true selves, to being authentic and making sure that the face we present to the world is merely an external manifestation of our internal nature. The next aspect is going to be exact on the 29th. Now bear in mind, these aspects have orbs of influence, so we'll be feeling them building up to the exact date, and then they obviously wane again once the key point of connection passes. So the next one is Saturn. It's currently retrograde in Capricorn, but this is also a trine to the Sun. So Saturn deals with things like structure, organisation, discipline, and limitation. And by that, I'm not saying that it's about trying to stop us from growing. It's about presenting obstacles to test our willingness, to test our mettle and test our resilience. Are we prepared to push ahead and to allow struggle and obstacles to strengthen us, or do we give up at the first hurdle and refuse to take responsibility and try to run away from all responsibility and just not grow because we fear any kind of restriction that responsibility seems to bring? Even though, ironically, if we don't embrace responsibility, we can't get true freedom, because responsibility is the price of true freedom. If we don't take responsibility for our own minds, our own actions, our beliefs, our thoughts, our words, then we can never be truly free, because we're always reacting to things rather than responding from that place of centeredness. But with the trine between the Sun and Saturn, we may well find it easy to incorporate qualities like patience, self-discipline, self-control, and the willingness to delay gratification, in the understanding that waiting until later on before reaping the rewards of something may bring back a bigger bonus or bigger reward or benefit in the long run. But as I've said, because this is a trine, it's a very free-flowing energy. If we're not careful, it's just another opportunity that passes by. And if we use this trine constructively, we can develop greater reserves of patience, of self-control, of self-discipline, and that resilience of spirit necessary to get us through any hard times we go through. The next aspect is on the 1st of May. This is a square, because the Sun, the North Node is in Leo and the Sun is in Taurus, both fixed signs, so the two are squaring one another. And when the Sun squares the nodal axis, so square the South Node in Aquarius and the North Node in Leo, this often can feel like an internal conflict or a crossroads of sorts, in terms of, because the two squares are equal at the exact point, do we stick to the old ways of doing things, so being detached or aloof? Do we keep relying on getting more information before we do anything? Do we go with the flow of the crowd? rather than deciding things for ourselves? And do we wait to get more information before we do anything? And for example, do we feel like we have to remain cool and detached, or do we learn to go in the direction of the North Node, which is learning to embrace play, of tapping into our creative self, of understanding that if the whole is going to be improved, then the individual parts have to become the best versions they can be. So North Node in Leo is reminding us to tap into that core nature, to tap into that creative spark within us and that divine creative force. That force isn't ours to control or ours to own, but something we all have the potential to tap into, to develop inspiration and get ideas for creative projects. And it's that willingness to develop the self-confidence to pursue those dreams, to pursue those goals, to embrace that childlike nature within us. It doesn't mean that we become childish and irresponsible and juvenile. It just means that we remember that child within. We remember that human desire for play, to not have to take everything so seriously, to be able to goof around without worrying about what other people are thinking, and to recognise that by embracing play and creativity, this enables us to develop greater creative problem-solving skills. Because if we never engage in playfulness or engage in creativity, then we'll never come up with new solutions to existing problems. It's only through being playful and being prepared to try wacky ideas, or ideas which may seem a bit daft, but just applying them in creative ways, in a way that it's not necessarily trying to solve everything straight away, but it's understanding that not everything in life is opposites in straight lines. Life is naturally rather chaotic. It has all kinds of twists and turns like a river, and all too often we try to live in a very straight, linear kind of way, when life is inherently non-linear. So Leo is about recognising that we need to kind of step out of these rigid ways of thinking and embrace new ways, to tap into that playfulness that kind of suggests ideas without being too serious about it, and just playfully troubleshooting it. And it's developing that confidence to pursue our dreams. It's learn to live from the heart, as it were, to bring the heart into the mix, so that we're embracing our emotions, we're being true to who we are. It's about learn to give and receive love properly, so we need to obviously learn to love ourselves first. So it's developing a healthy ego, one where we're playful, we're creative, we're curious, and we're prepared to try new things which other people may not understand it, but if we're being true to who we are and we're not trying to do things at the expense of others, then where's the harm in it? So it's learning to be creative, be curious, and engage that child within us. We all have that inner child, whether we like it or not, and if we don't engage with it, then that inner child is often like the core of it. It's often tied with a lot of our emotional issues. It's our connection with our childhood. So if we don't learn to embrace this side of us and embrace that creative side that's prepared to kind of let the mask slip and just be spontaneous, be creative, be that warm and emotional towards one another rather than cold and detached. Because when Leo is at its highest, this is about developing qualities like that emotional warmth for one another, of love towards one another, of that generosity of spirit, that magnanimous spirit where we're not taking everything personally, and we've learned to engage the more noble qualities within us. And the Sun square to Taurus presents us with this challenge of, do we strive to move in that direction, where we're moving in the direction of human growth and the best direction that we all need to be striving towards developing in order to become more rounded, so we let go of the need to be detached, cold and aloof, and to go with the flow of the crowd but not going with the divine flow. But if we only ever stick with the crowd, we don't recognise where things could be improved. We don't understand how to change things in a way that benefits everyone, because the thing is, all change starts within us, and for the health of a group to go up, or the health of any organism, requires that each individual cell or unit within it needs to be brought to its best potential. And this is what the North Node in Leo is saying, is become the best version of yourself, embrace that warm side, embrace that childlike side, embrace all those creative ideas, and then share them. Because it's only if we connect with our own creativity and we're prepared to share ideas, share our energy with others in order to create something bigger, that the higher side of Aquarius can manifest. So we need to be working on ourselves in order to become the best versions of ourselves, so that everyone else naturally benefits. Because if we don't work on ourselves, then we're not going to be able to do any better for anyone else. So it's through working on ourselves and becoming the best versions of ourselves that the world naturally benefits from. Now the next aspect is on the 6th. So this is a sextile between the Sun and Neptune. So Neptune is in Pisces, in his home sign. So there's a lot of very powerful Neptunian energy around as a result of Neptune being the Piscean energy is squared in effect. So the sextile between the Sun and Neptune gives us an opportunity to connect more with that spiritual energy, to feel it flowing through us and recognise it's a part of us. It's not something that's external to us. It's not something that we have to reach outside of ourselves. It's by connecting internally to be grounded in our body that we feel that internal nature, we feel that spiritual energy flowing through us. And by embracing this energy, we bring all that universal love and compassion inside ourselves, so we heal ourselves first. And then if we keep doing this until we're overflowing with it, then all that energy will naturally pour out from us into the environment around us, and the people around us will naturally benefit from that energy. But if we don't connect with that higher spiritual energy, and we don't connect with those highest states which allow us to develop deeper reserves of empathy, deeper reserves of compassion, stronger psychic senses, which allows us to pick up subtle cues when things are not quite right, and bring intuition together with logic, then if we don't deal with this side of things, then we usually end up with the escapism side, where we're trying to avoid reality at all costs because we don't particularly like the feel of it, or we're trying to find substitutes to achieve that feeling. So this could be like alcohol, hard drugs. For some people it's sugar, because it creates a temporary change in consciousness, but then you get that massive crash after, so we feel worse than we did before. So Neptune in Pisces sextile to the Sun reminds us that if we remain connected with our core nature, if we connect with that spiritual energy and let it flow through us, then a lot of these other hidden issues, or these subtle dysfunctions that can arise, can be healed. They can be transformed by letting that spiritual energy flow through us and naturally dissolve those internal structures which promote that dysfunctional way of being. Then by allowing these to be dissolved, we empower ourselves to radiate love better through learning to love ourselves unconditionally and without reservation. We share compassion for ourselves, and this then enables us to share much greater love and compassion to others, because we can't give to other people what we don't have. So if we're not working on ourselves and we're not developing these qualities within us, how can we realistically expect to give it to other people when they need it if we can't give it to ourselves? The next aspect in this is a opposition between the Sun and Jupiter retrogrades. This is on the 9th, though as I said before, the energy will be building up to it. But this marks the midpoint of the Jupiter retrograde. It's a time where, when there's this opposition, we feel that clash we feel that stress between the focal point. So Jupiter is in Scorpio, and the wisdom that the retrograde is trying to highlight to us is the need to go deep within ourselves and transform our consciousness, because Scorpio we all have a repression mechanism in the mind, but with the energy of Scorpio, this repression mechanism, it still works a bit but not very well. So the unconscious permeates through into conscious awareness, usually as a set of feelings, not necessarily thoughts or images. But Scorpio is water, so it's emotional energy. and this brings up the emotional charges associated with past events. And with Jupiter here, it's amplifying these energies and bringing it up, or strengthening the scorpionic energy within us. And the main task for us all is to be prepared to face the uncomfortable truths, to face uncomfortable issues within us that we've tried to suppress or tried to ignore, but now it's reaching a point where we just can't really ignore it because it's being shoved in our face in one way or another. With the Sun opposite Jupiter, this is a time for learning to release things. This is a bit like a full moon as such. When Jupiter and the Sun was conjunct one another in Scorpio, this was akin to a new moon. But now the Sun has gone completely around to the opposite, to oppose Jupiter, and this is a bit like a full moon. The Sun is reflecting back to us, or highlighting these issues for us through Taurus. But if we engage with the energy of Taurus and become grounded, which allows us to become more present, then it's through presence that Scorpio is healed. The old issues are released, because by being present with those feelings, present with the memories that are driving them, the emotional charges linked to them can be released, and by maintaining that presence, the emotional charge is separated from the event, and the event just becomes part of our story. It's not a source of pain anymore. But we have to be willing to become present within our own lives in order to do this. So this is a point where we may feel that needs for that transformation, or that necessity to recognise where do we have emotional charges that we haven't let go of, and what do we need to let go of before Jupiter turns retrograde in order to be more true to who we are and to honour that core spark within us. And it's also breaking down that need to control things, because in some respects Taurus and Scorpio oppose one another, but they complement one another. They're not necessarily antagonistic, they're necessary complements. They wouldn't be opposite one another if they weren't. So Taurus tends to deal with the more surface level of reality, so that being grounded in the physical body. Scorpio is that transformational energy that takes us deep within ourselves. It's below the physical layers, it's deep into the subconscious in order to purify what's there. But Taurus can help us remain grounded in the body, which allows us to remain present with things, so that we don't just disassociate when we encounter an emotional charge, which we find very painful. But Taurus also reminds us to not take things too seriously, while Scorpio at the same time reminds us to not be too shallow, to not live at the surface level of reality and never explore the deeper depths of who we are. Because if we explore those deep depths and release any illusions held within it, if we tap into that true power, that power at the core of who we are, but can be only tapped into through the emotional energies of Scorpio, and through recognising those primal instincts and the necessity of allowing the personal consciousness to die if we're to elevate our consciousness to the transpersonal. And so Scorpio is all about that rebirth. It's the moving away from that personal consciousness and opening out to a more transpersonal, where we recognise that we're connected with everything around us. Everything is interconnected, so whatever we do will impact others. And by being true to who we are and connecting with those deeper primal energies, that we then empower ourselves. We connect with that true power within us. We don't feel any need to control others or to exert power over others, because we already have the power within us. So what's the point in trying to control other people? That's just too much like hard work, as it were. And the last day that, where we have any key aspects to the Sun that will be exact, is going to be the 11th. This is when the Sun trines both Lilith and Pluto, who are within a degree of one another. Now, Lilith is all about that repressed feminine. It's the issues that we've buried deep down, and it's things that issues that we've rejected within ourselves. And if we don't face that rejection, and if we don't learn to acknowledge that side of ourselves and heal it and bring it back into the light, bring it back into consciousness and integrate it, then we will continue to suffer as a result. So Lilith in Capricorn is dealing with that kind of wound of not being true to the self, or that fear of being who we are, when the world is always pressuring us to be something that we're not. So it's a time of facing where the situations around us, we end up trying to pretend to be something that we're not, and we then suppress our true self, and then this then leads to deeper issues, because we're now trying to do things based on what we think will bring us approval, because it's not right for who we are. We feel that deep sense of discomfort, so we may even keep trying harder along certain goals, and it just will not go until we learn to be true to who we are. Now, with the Sun in a trine to Lilith, this aspect, if we approach things in an impersonal way, allows us to recognise the need to shine our own personal light. But if people come to us for advice or anything like that, or if they come to us, it's also desired, or that irritation when someone tries to be something they're not, they're trying to copy us when they shouldn't be doing that. So the Sun trine Lilith is a time of kind of encouraging people to be who they are, to shine their own light, to understand what is their gifts, what is their core nature. So it's not trying to make people into carbon copies of ourselves, because each one of us is unique as such, and no one can ever be completely like us. They can learn similar skills to what we have, and they can learn lessons from us, but none of us can be exactly like another person, because we're all wired in a different way. And to try and pretend to be something that we're not in order to feel more worthy is going to make us feel like a fraud in the long run. So Sun trine Lilith is highlighting that need to be true to who we are, and to face any issues we have around the need for social approval, or the need to feel like we have to hide certain parts of ourselves in order for us to fit in. Because if we're constantly trying to fit in, then we never really truly belong, because we're trying to be someone that we're not. So the true self, the most powerful part of us, isn't acknowledged, it's not recognised, it's not valued, and it's not encouraged, or it's not embraced by other people. Now, the other aspect I mentioned on the same day is the also trine to Pluto. Pluto deals with that core nature. It deals with the necessary polarization and bring shadow to the light. Pluto is retrograde at this point in time, so during this is a time where we're being asked to go inwards and to face our own shadows, because Pluto is a major test of our relationship with power, and also tests our willingness to maintain our integrity in the face of adversity. So Pluto is about encouraging us to dig to the core of who we are, to keep digging deep, and even when we feel like we've gone as far as we can, to dig a little bit further, to push a little bit further into the core of who we are, through facing our shadow side, and through accepting it and shining the light of conscious awareness on it, we then allow it to be transformed. But if we always reject it, or we always project it onto other people and never actually deal with it, then our shadow side will continue to undermine us. It will continue to keep us playing small, because a lot of the time it's born out of that feeling, or that sense of powerlessness, but sometimes it's because we fear our true power, and therefore we continue to play small rather than shining our light, and as such we project our power onto other people, when really we're rejecting the true power that lies within us, because we may be afraid of the responsibility, we may be afraid of being seen by other people, so we keep it hidden. But Sun trine Pluto gives us an opportunity for us to work more smoothly with the shadow side, to allow the insights to come to us, and to face these core issues, to face the resistance, to face adversity, and learn to be true to who we are. Because Pluto is going through Capricorn, which is all about that personal integrity, of being true to our core sense of self, and Pluto's really been amping that up and highlighting the consequences of what happens if we lie about things, and we try to be something that we're not. So the Sun trine Pluto is an opportunity for us to work with the energies of Pluto, to face our own shadow, to recognise where we're not acting with integrity or not acting within alignment, and these shadow issues that we then engage with because we're not connected with our core power, because we're trying to pretend to be something that we're not. So Pluto demands absolute truth, and these truths are often uncomfortable, but they're necessary in order for us to become empowered and to understand who we really are. So, but as I've said on all the other astrology videos I do, everything that I've mentioned is a set of possibilities or potentials. None of it is guaranteed to happen unless we take conscious responsibility for ourselves and we decide to work with the energies consciously, work with it constructively, and to take that time out to be with ourselves and learn to understand how our own minds work. The astrology itself won't actually force us to do anything, or it just brings awareness. It's like a map of the terrain that we'll be facing over the month. In this case, particularly in terms of interaction between the sun and the other planets, so there's obviously loads more going on around it. But if we understand what the astrology is trying to teach us, of what lessons that we need to embrace in our lives and work through in order to let go of old disempowering ways of being and embrace a greater degree of personal responsibility in order to empower ourselves. Because when we embrace those responsibilities and take charge of our own lives, then true freedom can occur and true empowerment. But if we're not prepared to take responsibility for our lives, if we're not prepared to grow beyond our current limits, and we're not prepared to take responsibility for any things that go wrong because of our own approach to things, then we keep ourselves stuck where we are. The astrology doesn't keep us stuck there, it just shows us what we need to be working on and potential consequences for not doing that. But we have to make that choice ourselves to engage with it. So I appreciate it's a long report and a lot to take on board, but I hope the Sun's transit through Taurus is a wonderful time where you develop the goals further, you get that time for grounding to develop a deeper appreciation of your own personal resources and your own inner gifts, and I hope it's a time where all the goals that are true to who you are and are right for you continue to manifest and continue to unfold as the year progresses. Obviously, we have one thing to mention is obviously this is with the Magdalene Centre, so we have workshops during the course of May, like mantra meditation again, and these often provide additional insights, and spiritual tools like meditation help us to work with things more consciously by becoming more aware of how our own minds work. So it'd be great to see you down at the mantra meditation workshops. Off the top of my head, they're on the 3rd and the 17th of May, so they're always wonderful sessions, and they present key insights which can help us achieve or understand a greater degree of perspective. So the astrology in itself gives us some perspective, but it doesn't really tell us what to do, etc., or how to become more aware of ourselves. It's through spiritual practice that we bring more of the light of awareness to our own minds, and this enables us to transform the way our minds work so that we empower ourselves rather than continue to disempower ourselves through unconscious thinking and unconscious behaviour. So may the Sun's transit through Taurus be a wonderful time full of reconnection with the self, greater progress on any goals you set, and may it be a time of learning to appreciate what we have and to embrace gratitude and willingness to sit back at times and allow things to unfold naturally and let the natural energies around us guide us rather than trying to push things and stress ourselves out. So take care, be blessed.